Recalibrating, to adjust or change something again in response to a new situation. 1 month into the war in Iran, nations across East Asia are recalibrating their strategic and economic priorities fast. Hampering, hindering or impeding the movement or progress of something. China has launched counter-investigations into trade practices that they claim are aimed at hampering the flow of Chinese goods to the U.S. Detaining, keeping someone in official custody, holding back. Washington has accused Beijing of detaining Panama-flagged ships in Chinese ports as a punitive measure. Contending, struggling to surmount a difficulty or danger. With no sign of the war easing, East Asian economies are contending with mounting energy pressures and rising costs. Strain, a force tending to pull or stretch something to an extreme or damaging degree. To ease the economic strain, Japan is turning back to coal power, even if it means rolling back emissions rules. Curbing, restraining or keeping something in check. The government has reconsidered its rules aimed at curbing greenhouse gas emissions due to the urgent energy crisis. Ample, enough or more than enough, plentiful. Although Japan has ample oil reserves, its electricity supply remains highly exposed to global price spikes. Impose, to force something to be accepted or put in place. Spiking fuel costs have forced the government to impose strict price controls and monitor fuel usage. Bolster, to support or strengthen. The White House stated that the two countries will bolster their deterrence capabilities to ensure a free and open Indo-Pacific. Indispensable, absolutely necessary. Peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait are considered indispensable elements of regional security and global prosperity. Unilaterally, used to indicate that something is done by only one person or group involved in a situation. The U.S. remains opposed to any attempt to unilaterally change the status quo through force or coercion. Coercion, the practice of persuading someone to do something by using force or threats. Stability cannot be maintained if regional powers rely on coercion to achieve their political goals. Contingency, a future event or circumstance which is possible but cannot be predicted with certainty. Recent comments referring to a possible Taiwan contingency have significantly strained ties with Beijing. Envoy, a messenger or representative, especially one on a diplomatic mission. China's Middle East envoy has been active in meeting with Iranian officials to keep diplomatic channels open. Neutrality, the state of not supporting or helping either side in a conflict. Analysts argue that having diplomatic leverage is not the same as maintaining true neutrality in the conflict. Mediator, a person or country who attempts to make people involved in a conflict come to an agreement. While China can help keep communication channels open, its role as a mediator should not be overstated. Overshadowing, appearing much more prominent or important than something else. Tensions between the two nations are still overshadowing any progress made in diplomacy. Aggressors, a person or country that attacks another first. The defenders showed absolute resolve against the aggressors who perpetrated crimes without boundaries. Perpetrating, carrying out or committing a harmful or illegal action. International organizations condemn the forces for perpetrating criminal attacks on civilian energy infrastructure. Blatant, of bad behavior, done openly and unashamedly. Gulf states condemned what they described as blatant and criminal attacks on their energy sectors. Pronged, having a specified number of parts or directions. Washington has adopted a two-pronged strategy to deal with the energy crisis and the ongoing war. Encompasses, includes or surrounds something. The Regional Security Alliance now encompasses several countries that are concerned about retaliatory strikes. Brunt, the worst part or chief resistance of an action or situation. The Gulf countries have been bearing the brunt of the retaliatory strikes during this conflict. De-escalation, the reduction of the intensity of a conflict or potentially violent situation. Canada is urging G7 members to collectively support a de-escalation of the war in Iran. G7. Monetary, relating to money or the mechanisms by which it is supplied and managed. Central banks may tighten monetary policy to combat rising inflation caused by surging oil prices. Bucking, opposing or resisting a trend. Despite the general selling pressure, some blue-chip stocks in China are bucking the downward trend. Crude, natural petroleum, raw or unrefined. Brent crude has surged by more than 50% since the war started, causing a scramble for alternative supplies. 50%. Adversely, in a way that prevents success or development. Southeast Asian economies tend to be more adversely impacted by high energy premiums and supply chain disruptions. Deflationary, characterized by or tending to cause a reduction in the general level of prices. Figures suggest that the economy is finally recovering from a years-long deflationary slump. Dampening, making something less strong or intense. Elevated energy prices are dampening the recovery in several industrial sectors by raising transportation costs. Levies, legal taxes or fees imposed by a government. The trade dispute holds the possibility of fresh levies being imposed on renewable energy products. Punitive, intended as a punishment. The detention of the ships is seen as an apparent punitive measure against the nation's recent court ruling. Quagmire, a complex or hazardous situation which is difficult to get out of. For decades, security analysts have viewed the Middle East as a geopolitical quagmire. Entanglement, the action or fact of being entwined or involved in something complicated. China aims to preserve its strategic flexibility by avoiding any kind of military entanglement in the region. Diversification, the process of enlarging or varying the range of products or fields. China is doubling down on energy diversification to protect itself from supply disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz. Logistic, relating to the detailed coordination of a complex operation. A closure of the Red Sea shipping routes would generate a huge crisis for global logistic networks. Brokering, arranging or negotiating a deal or settlement. China previously increased its influence in the region by brokering an unprecedented rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Hedging, protecting oneself against loss by making balancing or compensating bets. As conflict increases, some nations have returned to a playbook of hedging their bets between major powers. Juggernaut, a huge, powerful, and overwhelming force or institution. While Beijing is an economic juggernaut, it is now also inserting itself as a regional security provider. Reprisals, an act of retaliation. Many individuals decline to speak on camera due to the fear of government reprisals. Influx, an arrival or entry of large numbers of people or things. The country is currently not facing a massive influx of refugees, though trade through the mountains continues. Plunged, fell suddenly and uncontrollably. Hotel occupancy rates have plunged as the number of visitors from the war-torn region has decreased significantly. Prominent, important, famous, noticeable. Individual investors are playing an increasingly prominent role in the stock market despite the war's volatility. Volatility, liability to change rapidly and unpredictably, especially for the worse. Young traders say they are unfazed by this month's extreme market volatility. Seesawing, moving up and down or back and forth repeatedly. Stock prices have been seesawing wildly as investors react to daily news from the Middle East. Turbocharged, provided with more power, speed, or energy. Small individual investors have turbocharged the recovery of the benchmark index over the past few months. Invalidated, made a law, contract, or decision no longer valid. The Supreme Court invalidated the concession that had granted the company the right to operate the ports. Multilateralism, the principle of participation by three or more parties, especially by neighboring nations. Hong Kong and Singapore have agreed to continue collaboration while upholding the principles of multilateralism.